This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
Hello and welcome to War Horses, the only college equestrian podcast that's going to get you ready for the national championship tournaments. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Let's talk about some college equestrian. All right, the whole season, 8 months, 19 weeks of competition have all led to this, the national championships. This podcast will drop on Wednesday, and the following day, the dual discipline national championship will begin down in Ocala, Florida. The following day, Friday, the single discipline national championships will also begin. So let's get to it and look at some meet previews. Now, I'm actually going to do the single discipline first. It's a smaller tournament. There's only 4 teams, so we're just going to go through that one first. Our 4 teams are, in order of seeding, number 1, Lynchburg. Number 2, Dartmouth. Number 3, Charleston. And number 4, Sweetbriar. So in semifinal number 1, we have Lynchburg versus Sweetbriar, and over in semifinal number 2, we'll have Charleston versus Dartmouth. Now, I want to pause here just one more time and tell you these are not as good of semifinal action as we could have had. Each of these semifinals pairs teams from the same conferences against one another. Teams that have just ridden a whole bunch of times in the past, they're going to ride a whole bunch of times in the future, and we really should have gotten some semifinals where the teams don't normally ride against one another, but we didn't get that because the NCEA selection committee did not want you to have those kind of semifinals, so here's what you get. First, let's look at Lynchburg versus Sweetbriar, basically sequel number 50. Fences had 3 scoring combinations that were all equally likely. So, and now this is according to the historical stats of every team's best 5 riders, and the possible combinations were Lynchburg winning 3-0, Lynchburg winning 4-0, and Lynchburg winning 4-1. So we'll say that this event probably goes to Lynchburg 4-1. On the flat, the most likely scoring result is Sweetbriar 3, Lynchburg 1. So if you add those 2 results up, that would give us a final score of Lynchburg 5, Sweetbriar 4. So in that case, Lynchburg would advance to the finals. In the other semifinal, we have Dartmouth versus Charleston. Over fences, the most likely result is a 2-2 tie or a 3-2 Dartmouth win. On the flat, the most likely result is a 3-1 Dartmouth win. So if you add up those combinations, we have likely scores of either Dartmouth winning 5-3 or Dartmouth winning 6-3. So in both those cases, Dartmouth would advance to the finals. So that would set up a tournament final of number 1 Lynchburg versus number 2 Dartmouth. Now the most likely result between these 2 teams in fences is a 2-2 tie, but almost as likely is Lynchburg winning 2-1. So we're just going to go with a 2-2 draw for right now. On the flat, the most likely result there is Dartmouth winning 3-2. So if we add those up, the most likely final score would be Dartmouth 5, Lynchburg 4. And if that holds true, that would mean the Big Green would repeat as single discipline national champions. So we'll see if that happens. Now let's look at the big one, the dual discipline tournament. And as a refresher, here are the 8 teams that were invited and their seeds. Number 1, Auburn. Number 2, Texas A&M. Number 3, Georgia. Number 4, South Carolina. Number 5, SMU. Number 6, Oklahoma State. Yeehaw! Number 7, TCU. And number 8, Fresno State. So in quarterfinal number 1, we have Auburn versus Fresno State. Here are the most likely event scores. In fences, there are 2 scores that are most likely, either Auburn winning 4-0 or Auburn winning 4-1. On the flat, the most likely score is Auburn winning 3-1. On horsemanship, the most likely score is Auburn winning that 3-1. And in reining, the most likely scores are Fresno State winning 2-0 or Fresno State winning 3-1. So if we add those up, we have likely final scores of Auburn winning 11-5, Auburn winning 10-5, or Auburn winning 11-6. So the stats think that Auburn should win this by about a 5-point margin. It basically depends on how many ties we're going to get. Now, I have to point out that Auburn has been really underperforming at the national championship lately. In the last 5 years, Auburn has lost in the first round as either the number 1 or number 2 seed, 4 of the last 5 tournaments. Basically, ever since COVID, if you could draw Auburn in the first round, your chances of the upset were very good. Now, can Fresno State do that this year? Normally, I would say no, but Auburn has disappointed so many times that, frankly, yeah, it's possible. I mean, Auburn has not been good in this tournament, but the stats do like them, so we're going to go with the stats. Quarterfinal number 2 would be Texas A&M versus TCU. In fences, the most likely result is Texas A&M 3, TCU 1. There's also another likely result of Texas A&M winning 3-2. In flat, the most likely score here is TCU 3, Texas A&M 2. In horsemanship, the most likely score here is also TCU 3, Texas A&M 2. And in reining, the most likely score is a 2-2 draw. So if we add those up, we could have a 9-9 tie, which I would probably give the tiebreaker to Texas A&M. But we could also have TCU winning 10-9, based on how that fences outcome goes. So the stats say this could be a very exciting quarterfinal matchup. Now let's look at another quarterfinal between Georgia and Oklahoma State. In fences, the stats say Georgia is likely to win 3-1. On the flat, Georgia is likely to win 3-1 as well. In horsemanship, the most likely score is a 2-2 tie, but there's also a pretty likely outcome of Oklahoma State winning this 3-2. And in reining, the most likely result is Oklahoma State winning 3-1. But Oklahoma State winning 2-1 is also likely. So basically a bunch of ties. So if we add these up, we're looking at possible scores of Georgia winning 9-7 or Georgia winning 9-8. So the stats like Georgia in a close one. And actually, this will be the meet I am most interested to see who advances because, as you know, Oklahoma State did not ride against any of the top 4 teams this year, so their stats might be a little inflated. Now, of course, maybe they are just good and they just didn't get a chance to show it because of that schedule, but facing Georgia is going to tell us whether Oklahoma State was the beneficiary of a light schedule or whether they were being held down in the rankings because of it. And our last quarterfinal to look at is South Carolina versus SMU. In fences, the most likely scores are SMU winning 3-0 or SMU winning 3-1. On the flat, the most likely score is South Carolina winning 4-1. In horsemanship, the most likely score is SMU winning 3-1. And in reining, the most likely score is a 2-2 tie. So if you add those up, we could get scores of SMU winning 9-7 or SMU winning 9-8. And if all that happens, we are going to get these 2 semifinals. First, we would have Auburn versus SMU, and then we would have Texas A&M versus Georgia. So let's look at Auburn-SMU first. Once we run the numbers against these 2 teams, the most likely score in fences is Auburn winning 3-1. The most likely score on the flat is Auburn winning 3-1 again. In horsemanship, the most likely score is Auburn winning 2-1 or 3-1. And in reining, the most likely score is a 2-2 tie. So if we add that up, we're looking at possible scores of Auburn winning 10-5 or maybe 11-5. The stats really like Auburn in this one. And this is actually kind of unexpected. I'm not sure if I'm that confident, but we'll see. Now, keep in mind, all this is based on past performances. So these riders, they're having to memorize 3 different patterns for all 3 days. So if someone has a slip up, your typical 80% winning rider could lose her point to a 33% winning rider on the other team. Happens all the time. To Auburn. In this tournament it does. So we'll see. The other semifinal to look at is Texas A&M versus Georgia. Here's what the stats say is likely. In fences, the most likely score is Georgia winning that 3-2. On the flat, the most likely score is Georgia winning that 2-1. In horsemanship, the most likely score is Georgia winning 3-1. And in reining, the most likely score is a 2-2 tie. You add those up, and we got likely scores of Georgia winning 10-6. So here we have Georgia winning by a pretty comfortable margin. And before the SEC tournament, I would have said sure. But now, who knows? But we're going to go with the stats, and that means we would end up with a championship final of Auburn versus Georgia. And this does track with the stats. If you look back across the entire season, the teams that have scored the most total points in their meets were Auburn and Georgia. They are probably the 2 most talented rosters overall. So, of course, the stats are probably going to show that these 2 teams would meet in the final. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that means that's what the stats say is most favorable. And if that happens, here are the projected event scores between Auburn and Georgia. In fences, the most likely score would be Auburn winning 3-1. On the flat, the most likely score is Auburn winning 3-1. Bit of a surprise, but hey, we'll see. Horsemanship, the most likely score is Auburn winning 3-1. And in reining, the most likely score is Georgia winning 2-1. So you add that up, and the projected score is Auburn 10, Georgia 5. Now again, there's lots of ties, lots of toss-ups, But if you think about it, I mean, overall, that's a 5-point margin again. So Auburn's a considerable favorite in that one as well. Could that happen? Yeah, of course. But we've seen the reverse happen time and time again. But yeah, sure, let's go with it. Auburn wins the national championship. Why not? All right, so final thoughts. Now, this is our series of predictions for the national championships, but keep in mind, this is just the likely outcome of if everybody rides exactly as they have always ridden. Of course, we know some riders are going to overperform, some are going to underperform, and just one ride might be the difference between winning and losing. But as always, I'm going to be down in Ocala watching, and I'll see it all firsthand. If you're there, come on over and say hello. I don't bite. I love to take a picture with you, or I'll listen to your stories about how the judges did not give your daughter the score she deserved. I love all that stuff. And of course, after our 2 new champions are crowned, I'll be back here next week with the last episode of the season to recap the tournaments and give my final thoughts. So that's it for this episode. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Thank you very much for listening, and war horses.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.